Hello and welcome to Fireside Chats at the Influencer Series conducted by the Alchemist Accelerator. These are timely chats with tech leaders about what's on their mind. Let's get into it. We are so thrilled to have Vin Sharma here at the Influencer Series. Vin, thank you for participating.
Thanks for having me.
For those that don't know you, you have had a history of being involved with many of the most impactful technologies that are come out of Silicon Valley and through different storied organizations and firms. You spent 5 years at AWS as the director of engineering of deep learning at AWS. Most recently, you were at 15 years at HP, where you ended by managing Linux at HP. And between those two, you were at Intel, I believe, for 6 years, where you're the senior director of autonomous driving and the director of Hadoop for product marketing. And what we were just talking about before is that you're one of these interesting people that can cross between the worlds of sciences and tech and reflection on philosophy as well. And so you were just sharing with us that your undergraduate degree was in computer science and electrical engineering, and then you did a master's in AI. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you started to flirt with reflection and philosophy. Can you tell us about what happened?
Well, it started out with an interest in the technology itself, but the notion that came to me was this curiosity around why do people get so invested in technology. And it's funny for me to use that word because we're in the VC capital of the world right now. But we invest in technology because we believe in it. And we believe that it has a utopian potential. And we believe that it will make the world better for everybody. And that's a very natural response to any new technology that comes through. But then we start to look at its, development over time, its evolution, and its actual adoption into the society as a whole. And we start to come across these very gritty realities of power structures. The powers that be want to preserve the powers that they have. And when a new technology threatens to disrupt that power structure, there's a contention between those. And sometimes new companies evolve and emerge. And certainly the NASDAQ is a very different look and feel today than it was 20 years ago for all of these reasons. But what I got curious about was just when do we invest our hopes and fears into new technologies when they come in, and how do we deal with them as they evolve, and how does society shape technology as much as technology shapes society?
And that's what you're exploring a PhD in.
That was what I was studying, yes.
And so can you share with us what you learned?
So a couple of things. One, that particular program at Georgia Tech was actually started by Melvin Kranzberg, who is considered the godfather of the history of technology. And so there are a couple of Kranzberg laws of the history of technology. The first is, and this is all relevant to us as we talk about AI and agents and everything else, it's that we overestimate the pace of adoption and underestimate the scale of adoption. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take a long time. It'll take longer than we think it will. But in the end, it will be much more pervasive in ways that we never imagined. So that's kind of a cardinal rule. And we take that for granted. You've seen that being bandied about quite frequently nowadays. But that would be true for agents and AI as well, as much as it was for .com back in the mid-90s when I was studying in grad school.
And so you think we're overestimating the pace of adoption of AI?
We are.
Okay.
AI has had a storied history. Obviously, that we've been through many seasons. The winters are the most notable ones, and we're currently in a summer of the latest wave of a particular form of AI. And it's that particular form of AI that we are vested in, to where we assume that this particular type of autoregressive large language models will change the world for the better and will completely transform everything that we've ever done, because this seems to work so well, and it worked well for computer vision works well, language modeling works well, so therefore deep learning is going to change everything that we've done. Now, that may well be true. It may be true, but what will likely happen is that we'll hit a particular set of limitations. Gary Marcus calls this deep learning hitting a wall, and he's been talking about this for quite some time. But we're going to find quite practically that there are limitations to this current implementation of AI technology. And AI itself will evolve and continue, but this particular form of it will morph as much as expert systems are no longer what dominates our conversation today. So there will be something, and very likely the edges of that are already starting to emerge. We're starting to see things like reasoning become very, very important, and recognize that neural networks that recognize patterns and generate patterns may simulate a certain kind of reasoning through the step-by-step process or chain of thought, but fundamentally it's not quite the deductive closure that you need when you think about logical conclusions and inferences and counterfactuals and things like that that aren't necessarily just pattern recognition. It's a way of starting with axioms and working your way through consequence. And those types of capabilities may have to come from something else adjoined to neural networks.
So it's not a difference in degree.
It's not more scale will solve all problems.
It's a fundamentally difference. And what do you think is the time frame around that next paradigm?
I think I love the fact that the application and the platform co-evolve. So what's likely to happen is that we'll take the agents and the AI based on large language models and multimodal models and start to deploy them into production over the next 2 years and hit failure modes. And those failure modes will force us to recognize that perhaps they should be, that LLM-based agents would be fantastic in media and entertainment and gaming, but they're probably not so good at this time for healthcare and fintech and banking and insurance and government and agencies within governments that care deeply about the welfare of people that they serve, and or energy and utilities and so on and so forth. So what's going to happen is that when you start to see POCs fail in those regulated industries, it's going to force people to say, what else do we need to do to get this to work? And that's going to drive these new dimensions.
And is that an underlying thesis behind the venture that you're the
That's
CEO
exactly
of now?
the crux of how we started, because I felt like for AI to actually see its potential fulfilled with this particular wave of intelligent agents based on LLMs or multimodal models based on neural networks, we need to solve for these harder problems that aren't just about the competency of perception, but about things that would allow us to invest in these agents with a proper sense of whether we call it guardrails or regulatory governance. However we frame what it means to trust these entities, we need to figure that out really quickly, and to do that at the same time as we're advancing their capabilities. Because the worst thing that we could do is build an untrustworthy intelligent system that you deploy in a mission-critical application.
And is that the mission of Vijil?
The mission of Vijil is to help.
Vijil is the name of your startup.
Vijil with a J, just to keep it, just to get the domain name, frankly, practically speaking, is to help enterprises in regulated industries build and operate agents that they can trust.
Yeah. And so putting that on the lens of what you said before, that the real way to solve this is going to be a difference in kind, not in degree. Is it sort of a bimodal product mapping plan where you have to solve these short-term problems that are emerging from the current paradigm, and then in parallel, are you building something else for the longer paradigm? Or
That's exactly right. You read my mind, but the premise is that we have to, as a startup, we want to be able to meet customers, and particularly as a startup whose DNA is inspired in large part by my experience at AWS, where we like to build things and iterate with customers, follow where the customers are leading us, rather than kind of come in after 7 years of deep thought on some random, kind of a pet peeve of some kind. So in this case, where we're starting with is that where customers are today is that they want practical applications based on LLMs that work in their particular domain and task and use case. And let's get that sorted to where they don't necessarily have high security requirements or reliability requirements or safety requirements spelled out, because nobody knows quite yet what that looks like. So we're starting with kind of this paradigm that everything that isn't explicitly permitted should be prohibited, because we don't yet know what this thing that we've built is fully capable of. It has latent capabilities for harm, for damage of various kinds. And so rather than kind of, pretend that the monster under the hood just doesn't exist, we basically said there is a monster under the hood. This is the only thing it's allowed to do at the moment. So the longer term second horizon, if you will, is this idea that we should build more specialized, purpose-driven agents based on models that start with a very curated data set, just very carefully constructed to debias, detoxify, and then build with these principles that we think are important for trust.
But that still also is it's a variant of the existing paradigm. You're not building a new paradigm.
It's a variant of the existing paradigm because what we're adapting is the idea that today, when model developers construct a model, they're optimizing for its competence or performance or its accuracy, if you will. That's kind of the crux of it. Now, if we think of trust as having many other aspects, let's say we say trust, and to define it very concretely, is that an agent or a model, an LLM, does what it's supposed to do consistently under varying conditions, including those that involve noise or malice, so under attack. And in the event of the agent or the model being compromised, which it will, because there will always be someone sophisticated and malicious enough to find a way to break it, that the compromise that you limit the blast radius of the damage that the model can do or the agent can do in that event. So you have three well-defined notions. It does what it's supposed to do, reliability. It does that under pressure or attack, security. And in the event of a successful attack, it has a limited blast radius, safety. So these are the three things that we're tackling.
And do you view yourself as a horizontal layer? We were just having this conversation with Manjeet actually at Salesforce. Do you view this as another horizontal layer of the AI stack, or do you view this as a vertical AI application?
I see this as a horizontal layer that glues into the existing platforms on which people build agents and deploy them or operate them. And the reason I think of it that way is because you can't solve for it application by application. You're repeating a lot of what are core principles of security and safety and reliability.
And so when you think about building a horizontal startup that hopefully will become this emerging unicorn and big success, where do you start? Are you starting with a specific vertical, or are you starting with a variety of use cases to prove out the extensibility of the platform?
We're starting with a number of experiments that we're running concurrently in kind of the core sort of regulated industries. So if I imagine, my favorite acronym for all of them is Gabriel: government, automotive, banking, recruiting, insurance, energy, and legal.
Oh, wow. Okay, so a wide variety of verticals.
So, but if we did that across the board, this would just not scale, and we would be we wouldn't be capital efficient in our experimentation. So we're focusing on a couple: banking, insurance, and legal, because we think that they're sitting on the largest potential for the use of LLMs, text, huge corpora. And so if we start there and say, what does it take for a legal tech company that serves attorneys and law firms to be able to do that? Just let's pretend something very simple like contractual reviews. So you have a contract, it's an MSA, you want to express a certain set of preferences, and you want the LLM to very quickly verify that the contract that you got is the one that you'd like to sign. There are some well-defined guardrails and constraints around that use case in the application, and we can test those in a kind of capital-efficient way. And likewise, I think there are some use cases in banking and insurance that we could do as well. Others will follow, and I think there's more complexity with multimodal models and autonomous driving. There's a history. Government agencies have a different set of constraints, and they have to wait for the regulations to be enforceable, to have teeth. Mm-hmm. So part of this is just waiting for the maturity of the regulatory landscape to settle as well.
Makes sense. And can I ask, is there any hidden secrets you learned at AWS that you think you're using now as a CEO of a startup, or any insights that you learned from Amazon that you think founders should know?
I think that every founder should read the Amazon leadership principles, and they're as far away from being hidden as you can imagine. They're very public, very clear. extremely well articulated, and I think I would credit my approach to building the startup to those leadership principles and to building the team fundamentally. So that's one. The second is I think we encourage our team to have a writing culture, and that to me is incredibly important. There's a great deal of stuff written about PRFAQs and the process and how that distills kind of your thinking about the market and the technology and the use case and the customers. That's true. But also from a founder perspective, one of the things that I benefited the most from as a GM in the deep learning organization was writing what we call the OP1 documents. These are planning documents for the next year or perhaps 2 years, sometimes a 3-year plan. And those forced you to do a great deal of this reflection and second order thinking of not just what's the trend, but what's the signal behind the trend that you can build upon and think about. And then also very critically, self-critically examine what you've been able to do with the technology and the team that you've had for the past year as you go forward. So you're not kind of overextending yourself. You're doing this bimodal strategy of let's incrementally evolve something while at the same time anticipating what a customer may need 2 years from now and kind of working backwards from that.
Was that based on the structure of the taxonomy of that written document, or was it more just the principle of writing as the medium?
It's the principle of thinking through what it is, thinking through, I guess, all of the factors that go into a reasonably robust long-range plan.
Okay.
And then articulating it to a point where the writing did clarify a huge amount of kind of the woolliness of, I tend, as you can tell, to ramble. So
you're so articulate, though. I think I don't know if that's if you came to Amazon with that articulate capability, or if it was honed by Amazon.
I thought I knew how to write until I came to Amazon, and I had to rethink and relearn it.
And so even in your startup today, you guys use written memos, and no slides.
Well, we have slides because we have to talk to investors.
But that's it. Okay, interesting. Awesome, Vin. One of the things that we're experimenting with is with ending with a 6-word takeaway of advice to aspiring entrepreneurs going into AI. Do you have a takeaway in 6 words or less that you would want to share?
Follow your curiosity.
3 words. Brevity is the soul of wit. That's even better. Thank you, Vin. That was terrific.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And that's our show. Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for more discussions as well. You can also check out our website, alchemistaccelerator.com, to learn more about the Alchemist Startup Accelerator program and to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.